My mom always used to say to me, keep 2 feet in your canoe. And that's reference to the 𝙏𝙬𝙤 Wampum Belt Treaty. You know, where you have the 𝙏𝙬𝙤 or Anishinaabe or indigenous people in their canoes with our ways of knowing and our ways of being, and you have it was originally the Dutch or the European people in their ships and their ways of knowing and their beliefs, and we're supposed to travel on the river of life parallel, never interfering, never crossing, but sharing that river in peace, friendship, and respect forever. And my mom always said, keep 2 feet in your canoe, because it's very easy sometimes to slip and find yourself with 1 foot in the ship and 1 foot in the canoe. People are coming from all different places. Some people have been disconnected from their culture, and coming here sometimes might be their first time, first opportunity to be able to reclaim some of those teachings, to be able to connect with where they're from.
Growing up, like my dad always told us, like, oh, we're indigenous, we're like Cree, but I didn't really know what nation we were. When I first came here, I came in this area, I was scared to walk in, because I always had that like imposter syndrome of my indigenous culture, because I didn't grow up on a res, and I'm not status. So like I don't have the official documentation to say like, hey, I'm First Nation. So for me, at first was hard to be like not proud of it, but like to really voice like, hey, I'm First Nations. Like,
and me personally too, especially in my younger years here, was feeling I was in my own little world, in my own bubble, and people wouldn't accept me because I'm not Indigenous enough, or because I'm reconnecting and so much of my culture was lost.
You know, a lot of times youth, you know, their parents or grandparents might have had a bad experience with trying to connect with culture, especially if their family was part of the residential school system.
You know, schools were still around in 1990, right? In Ontario, right? Yeah, so my mom was in the schools for years growing up, and she never really opened up about it when I was younger. You know, I asked questions, but she never really told me the truth, because finding out later, she lost a lot of friends. They'll come to your house and just literally take you from your parents, right, forcibly, and then just ship you off, and you wouldn't even know where the kids were going.
There's been a lot of impacts from residential schools, from the 60s scoop. People have seen a lot of trauma in their communities. They may have lost a lot of family members.
well, yeah, like indigenous culture is like a spoken culture. Like it's not written. We don't have a Bible. We don't have a written thing. So it's like very storytelling. That's why elders are such a big thing in our cultures, because they're the knowledge keepers. They're the people who like tell us like the legends and like the teachings and whatnot, and that they've passed down through generations. So like that being cut off like a couple decades ago, like it's hard to regain that, and like it's more like we're regaining it but in a different sense.
Going to beating every week to be able to reconnect is something that's very important to me. It's not something that I was taught by my grandmother, which is difficult to say. However, I very much believe it's blood memory, and someone in my family was very talented at this. It allows me to pour my heart out into something that's not sports, that's not school, and it's something that's so separate and is so valuable to me and my heart and my spirit.
Something as simple, for example, we have a smudging space just right over there. And to be able to come to a space and smudge freely, where, you know, growing up, you used to have to ask permission to do something that's just so like a basic part of like who I am and who like we are. Like this space gives students an opportunity to have a place just to feel at home and safe, and to be able to explore and learn in like a judgment-free way and kind of find their way. You know, in my language we say Minobumadzuin, which is like the good path, the good life, right? And I think many of us are trying to connect to that. Many of us are trying to find our way through this, Western society as an Indigenous person.
When we have Indigenous students, they can be coming and they have grown up in community, they've had access to culture, and we also have students who have grown up in urban areas or been disconnected from their home communities. So it's a really good opportunity to come here and to be able to connect with other Indigenous students, to be able to meet with elders, knowledge keepers, get access to traditional culture and programming through our supports. So it really is a space where, no matter what your level of engagement is with your community at home or what knowledge you have of your own ancestry or your own culture, there really is an opportunity here to help build that. And we really think that connection to your identity and connection to those Indigenous roots, that's really a key factor in success for our students.
We have a number of areas where Indigenous students are seen and celebrated. The Indigenous Student Services, of course, the Indigenous Health Learning Lodge. There's also important research that goes on in the McMaster Indigenous Research Institute. And so throughout campus, there's an emphasis on both supporting our Indigenous students and in doing the important research.
McMaster's a place where you can find the balance between athletics, academics, and culture and spirituality.
I remember playing, and I knew I had my community and a lot of Crees up in northern Quebec following me, right? Just watching me on TV, because at the time we were on CHCH, kind of game of the week, right? And so they would watch, and they would just kind of call me afterwards and just like say how proud they are. But that McMaster logo to me is like just the history of this, community.
Those of us who, have had the privilege of wearing the Marauder have that connection to the brand and what it means to be a Marauder.
There's so much significance behind the McMaster Marauders eagle and just the emblem of the M for this school already. Generations of family have history tied to.
And so infusing that with Indigenous elements and the way that Kyle did really helps open it up to an entire other community.
Being a local artist from Six Nations, having him be able to do an indigenized version of the Marauders logo is just really a great physical representation of that step towards indigenization across campus. It is just a logo, but it also is a way that our students then, they see themselves in that.
Somewhat goes without saying that these institutions for a very long time have been very exclusive and haven't always been open or willing to have the Indigenous perspective be a part of the fabric of education that goes on here. But I think that this piece and also work that the university has done over the last few years really shows a commitment towards an honest reflection on its history. This is a very simple way to engage with people outside of the McMaster community. It's very much a way that McMaster is putting sort of a foot down in a sense and saying that we are here to support the Indigenous community.
I think that's what this logo represents. Not only does it bring awareness and make people think deeper, but it is something that unites us, whether you realize it or not.
That logo is just a small part, and it just makes me proud to be Indigenous.
The biggest thing about this logo for me is I see a piece of me in that logo.
I think the simplest thing that I can really say to that is that I just want this logo to be inspiring.
This space for me, and even this logo, it's kind of like a way to ground yourself and a way to connect and remember who you are and take pride in who you are and have hope that you can continue this path within these spaces and still be a proud Anishinaabe, 𝙏𝙬𝙤 𝙁𝙚, wherever you come from person.